Well, shalom, shalom, everyone. This is John Craig, and I'm here from our sanctuary, our gathering place here in Amarillo, Texas, at Life of Worship Ministries. And I'm so happy to be with you again on this wonderful Tuesday evening, walking in spirit and truth. That's where we're at. You got me at least one more week. That would be us or me and you and together. And I think we're going to be finishing up for Ezra tonight. I really hope you've been enjoying this journey that we've been having. And last week, I don't know if you got to listen to it. If you didn't, go back and check it out. But in 4 Ezra chapter 15, or if you're looking at the King James version of the Apocrypha, with the Apocrypha, it's 2 Esdras, and it's chapter 15. And yeah, 4 Ezra got a glimpse of Planet 7X, Planet X, Nibiru, whatever it is. And we talked a little bit about that last week. We might hit a quick review before we go into chapter 16. And 16 is the conclusion. It's the conclusion. Can you believe it's taken this much time? But I've really been enjoying this journey, and it's been good to just take it at a slower pace. And I've been enjoying that too. Okay. Life of Worship Ministries. I want to say thank you so much for everybody that's taken time to go in and with tithes and offerings and love gifts to help support this ministry. We are in a new month and a little short on our rent. I hate to say that, but we're a little short on our rent, and so we're still putting that together so we can get that to the landlord just ASAP. And we did get the water bill paid though, and I was able to work some things there with the city of Amarillo. So, and then after we get the rent paid, then it's the next set of bills, like the gas and the electric. But we're good. We're getting there. So thank you, everybody that's been part of that. Keep praying. Keep praying that people, there's a lot of people that tune in and they pick us up on the archives, and they're not connected with the congregation, but they're connected, or they might be connected with the congregation. And there's many people that are out there that actually have additional means. And if you do have those additional means and you like what we're doing here at Life of Worship and what we're attempting to accomplish and reveal and bring to people's attention, so that we're all ready when our bridegroom calls and the sound of the shofar blows, and that we will be those 5 virgins that have extra oil, and we'll be able to rise up and we'll be able to go in before the door closes. That's our goal, and we want to bring as many people with us. And if I can have that little role, that one little role that might be that spurring that gets one more person through the door before the door closes, and the people on the outside are left to fend for themselves through some of these trials that are actually discussed in chapters 14 and 15, or 15 and 16, where we've been reading. And my goodness, you just think about the things that are coming upon the earth that Ezra gets this vision of 4 centuries before Yeshua. And then we see the very same concepts spoken by Yeshua, like we see in Luke 21 and Matthew 24 and other places within Scripture. And then John gets a revelation in what we call the book of Revelation. And he gets those revelations that actually they all coincide together. You see the same type of things that Daniel gets, that Ezekiel gets, and they just kind of echo throughout Scripture. They're just talked about in different ways. And so I want to encourage you, if you have not listened to this 4 Ezra, and you're picking this up now on the latter part of this book, I want you to go back to the beginning and pick up these concepts. Pick up the concepts of the idea of the people that lived through the Second Temple period, and some of the things that they discussed. The fellowship of Yahad, of the Yahad. What did they do? One of their focuses was on the fact that Messiah was coming, that there would be signs of his coming, but they understood too that when he came, things were going to change. Well, Yeshua did come and it set the stage, but the very message that they were giving and discussing within their communities, Yeshua discussed and talked within the communities that he went to. And then ultimately we see, wow, we didn't see a fulfillment of those things. We saw glimpses and pieces of those. And over 2,000 years now, it's like reading in 4 Ezra, it's like reading our current events. So with that, I found on my Facebook, actually it wasn't my Facebook, it was on Gil Broussard's, I found a better picture about Planet 7X when it comes in, and there was an overlay of the map of Mars, where Mars has all of these meteor craters, and where there's a big spot where it looks like, and it's theorized that this Planet 7X, this extraplanetary system that's coming through, actually bounced off the southern part of Mars. And I wanted to bring that picture to you. So let me pull that up, and I'm going to share a screen with you real quickly. As soon as I can find it, forgive me for not having it pulled up already, but you're going to find this really interesting. Last week I had a picture that's like, yeah, it kind of looks different, kind of looks interesting, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to show. And when I scrolled down a little bit further, Gil had a better picture. That it's actually the picture that I saw that he had done a recent broadcast on Paul Begley's show. All right, so bear with me. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the screen here. I'm looking for the overlays. There's the one I did. Now, can you see it? Do you see it? It took a little bit of time, but I got it there. So what you have is this. You can see Texas right there, right? See my mouse in the middle of the screen. So this is the part of Mars that was hit by all those meteors, and it's overlaid across the United States. This part here, right here, that's over the Gulf, the Gulf of Mexico. This is this major crater where it fits. Actually, when you calculate the size of this planetary system, Gil Broussard's actually calling it a comet. A comet because he said it's not because it's made because a comet is not made the same way that a planet is, and that it has this essence of an iron core. And so anyways, he calls it like this major comet that's 7 times the size of planet Earth. Well, when you calculate a spherical object and where it would bump up against a planet like Mars, and that impression that it would make when it bounces off of Mars, he calculates it, and then look at the size right here. I'm going to get my mouse right here in this blue area. If you look at it real closely, that is the impact of what the spherical object and the size of it bumping up against Mars. Very interesting. And yet then all around this whole area, of course, this is the United States, going all the way down into Mexico and other places, you could see the overlay of where these craters are from the meteor trail that follows behind this comet. So as Mars is passing through that meteor trail, then it would be pelted, and it's all in the southern atmosphere. So you can kind of see where that plane is of the contact. Now, the interesting thing is that plane of this comet that's coming in, it's at the same plane that Earth is in. And this is very interesting, because when you line it up against Scripture, you see that there are various climate change issues that take place whenever this celestial body passes close to Earth when it comes around through the solar system. And you can see that even now that, and I talked about this last week, is Neptune and Jupiter and Saturn and Mars and Venus, all of these planets are experiencing changes like climate type changes, and it's affecting the atmosphere. It's affecting, they're finding that there's been tilts changes. We talked about how Jupiter, how the storm, that red dot has intensified earlier than what they had anticipated and what they've been watching, and they know it goes through different cycles. We have all of these different elements that take place when this big celestial body comes through our solar system. And so it would make you think why they are telling people to prepare. They're telling people to prepare and get stores of food and extra medicines if you take medicines, and make sure that you have a way to survive, extra water in your house. And they're trying right now, and I think it's very interesting as well, that they're trying to point to the fact that we may be on the brink of war, which I think we are on the brink of war. But how much of it also is because they're trying to beef up and escalate war on one side, and for a lot of different reasons, considering the state of the economy and finances of banking and all of those things. And yet on the other side, is it because they know of this celestial body that's coming in and it's affecting things? So in other words, don't look up. Remember that movie that came out last year? So that whole process, don't look up there, because we're going to, watch what we're doing over here, because over here, we don't want you to see. Call me a conspiracy theorist. No, it's actually just very interesting, because what I really like to do is look at the biblical record. I like to know what the sages talk about, like Ezra. Right? So Ezra saw things, he was given a download, and some of these things he could share right away. Remember when we read that over in chapter 14? Some of the things that he could share right away so that everybody would know. And then some of the things, it would only be revealed to the people who are walking in wisdom. So people like you and I, people that are studying Torah, you have no wisdom unless you study Torah. I'm going to say that right out. So anybody that's watching this right now and you're saying, what's this thing about Torah? Didn't Yeshua take away and we're no longer under the law? And, that's a bunch of baloney, people. The law is Yah's way of life. It is the way of life. Yeshua called himself, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by me. And the way, the truth, and the life is a Hebraic idiom for the first 5 books of the Bible. Get that straight. So in other words, if we want to know Yeshua, those very foundational things that are there at the beginning, he'll work out and have you bring revelation to you if you're willing to learn and understand the truth and get rid of the doctrines. And I'm going to say this, those things that we call church doctrines and the Christian doctrines, some of those doctrines are good. Some of those doctrines are doctrines of demons, because they cause people to say, well, the front of the book expired, therefore we don't need it any longer, so we're going to just delete it. But the word itself, warned in the book of Deuteronomy by Moses, said, if you take away from any of these words or add to it, you're under a curse. And guess what John said in the book of Revelation? If you add to any of these words or take away, you're under a curse. Don't be under a curse. What is the ultimate result of a curse? The ultimate result of a curse means destruction. It's destruction for you and anyone that would listen to you. Therefore, listen to what the Bible says. Listen to what it says at the very beginning. Yeah, I agree. Torah is the equivalent of the Constitution. It is Yah's constitution. It is his rules of life. And it is not burdensome, according to John in 1 John. The word is not burdensome, but it does identify things for us. So enough of that. It's a little bit of a rant of mine, but it is truth. And I really, 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 really want anybody that's listening, that if you don't understand I'm going to put it this way, the Christian roots of your faith, the Christian roots of your faith should take you back to the first century. Well, who was in the first century? Well, we have all of the apostles and we have Yeshua. And what did they do? They followed the roots of their faith. Well, what's the roots of their faith? They went back to Torah. Don't confuse it with Pharisaical or modern Jewish Orthodox belief systems, because they were the ones that usurped the authority of the temple in the Second Temple period. from the descendants of Aaron, and through that led from Eleazar down to the time of David, when Zadok was made to be the high priest, and he maintained and I guess preserved the true lineage of that which was taught by Aaron and Moses. So they preserved also with the zeal, like Phinehas, who is the son of Eleazar. We got to understand those connections there, and when we miss those connections, then we will divert and we'll miss it. And 1 degree of missing it will take us a long ways off course. And so it's very important that we are able to restore that which is restored. When the disciples, the apostles talked about this with Yeshua in Acts chapter 1, about, is this the time that you're going to restore all things? And he says, it's not for you to know these times and these epochs. But what are the restoration of all things? Well, we've got to go back to the beginning. Ultimately, it takes us back to the garden, because that's where we're supposed to be. Okay, let's go back and look at Ezra in chapter 15, because in chapter 15 it talked over in verse 13. They that till the ground shall mourn, for their seeds shall fail through the blasting and hail, and with a fearful constellation. That word constellation is that which is celestial. Okay, just keep that in mind. That which is celestial. So something is incoming that is celestial. It is from it's cosmic. It is from the solar system and from outside the solar system, and it's doing things that are affecting the earth. Okay, so so the problem is that those people that are not prepared, those people that have not dealt with the very sins and iniquities of their life, are going to look at this thing for fear of those things that are coming upon the earth. Now, let's jump over to verse 38. And then shall there come great storms from the south and from the north, and another part from the west, and strong winds shall arise from the east, and shall open it, and the cloud which he raised up in wrath, and the star stirred to cause fear toward the east, and west wind shall be destroyed. The great and mighty clouds be puffed up, full of wrath, and the star that they may make all the earth afraid, and them that dwell therein. And they shall pour out every high and eminent place a horrible star, fire and hail and flying swords. We're talking about those plasma discharges, flying swords, and many waters, that all fields may be full, and all rivers with the abundance of great waters. So we're just talking about just think about the epic storms. When you think about a hurricane, just think about hurricanes that are twice as fierce as the hurricanes that we've experienced so far. Even when you had those class 4 and class 5 hurricanes that that hit Florida, and that we've had in the past. I mean, think about what the Philippines have been. They've been by typhoons. They have been embattled by the typhoons that have been class 5 storms. Even China, I think, got a huge storm last year. And you think about the abundance of great waters, and they shall break down the cities and walls, mountains and hills, trees of the wood and grass of the meadow, and their grain, and they shall go steadfastly unto Babel and make her afraid. And they shall come to her and besiege her. The star and all wrath shall they pour out upon her. Then shall the dust and the smoke go up into heaven, and they that be about her shall bewail her. So I'm just wanting to read this in the terms of, here's Ezra's talking, and he's talking about what he saw in these visions, and he's letting us know. And then when we look at how he describes it, you can kind of get a picture, right? You can get a picture of what he's trying to describe. And he goes on and he says, woe be unto you, Asia, that are the partaker of the hope of Babel, and are the glory of her person. Woe will be unto you, you wretch, because you have made yourself like unto her, and have decked your daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in your lovers. So it goes on. It just said, so this is, part of this whole process. And he goes on, and this is an amazing, I think he's just reiterating what Elohim has said. And verse 49, chapter 15, I will send plagues upon you. And he repeats the same thing time and time and time again as we go into chapter 16. I will send plagues upon you, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste your houses with destruction and death. And the glory of your power will be dried up as a flower. I mean, just think about how the governments of the world right now, every government of the world right now, they're flexing their muscles. What did Great Britain just do? The UK did just this last week. They said, we've redeveloped, it's taken us 6 years, we've redeveloped the Trident missile, and now it can travel at 18,000 miles per hour. So now Great Britain has entered into the hypersonic world. Well, I think the United States already is there, but they just haven't shown their cards yet. But we know what Russia can do. We know what China can do. We know what North Korea can do, because all of them have developed hypersonic weapons. Boy, flexing of the muscles. This is the pride of the nations. The glory of your power. And it says it'll be dried up like a flower. So that's pretty serious. The heat shall rise that is sent over you. You shall be weakened. So here we got rains, we got floods, we got storms, we got winds, we got all this. And then it says we have heat. It makes me kind of wonder, because, anybody that's ever listened to Paul Begley on Thursday evenings and Mike from Around the World has talked about, and he talks about the heat, and he talks about the floods and that are coming. And then you think, well, where's he getting that information? Well, maybe he read for Ezra. He's just not telling people because he speaks so cryptically. Well, I'm not speaking cryptically to you, right? I want to be up front with everybody so you know what these hidden scriptures that have been pulled out from our 66 book Bible. And we wonder, why were they? Well, it's because Ezra says you need to keep Torah, and you need to have faith and faithfulness, and then you'll be preserved. And it says, you shall be weakened as a poor woman with stripes, and as one chastised with wounds, so that the mighty and lovers shall not be able to receive you. So in other words, you nations, you're going to look ugly, and nobody's going to be around you. And I can't help but to place the nation of the United States of America in that category. The nation of the United States, who has had many lovers around the world, then chastised. And then I go back here to this picture that we have here about this overlaid around the United States, overlaid with what happened to Mars. And I think, oh my goodness, the chastisement upon her. Nobody wants her anymore. She's been beat up. Doesn't look good. Nobody wants to pay that money anymore to get her services, right? I'm just saying, let's just be honest here. That's what America has done, the whoredom of America, to all the nations of the world, trying to, only saying you can only trade in my money. So exchange your money for my money. And then she goes out around the world to beat up the other nations that choose not to trade in her money. Okay, just going right on. Let's see. Kind of going on. It says, verse 54, set forth the beauty of your countenance. So wait a minute. Let me go to 53. If you had not always slain my chosen, O United States of America, exalting the stroke of your hands and saying over their dead, when you were drunken what? Drunken with power. Set forth the beauty of your countenance. The reward of your whoredom shall be in your bosom. and therefore shall you receive recompense. In other words, you're going to get paid back for what you did to these other nations. Like as you have done unto my chosen, says Yahweh, even so shall Elohim do unto you, and shall deliver you into mischief. Your children shall die of hunger, and you shall fall through the sword, and your city shall be broken down, and all yours shall perish with the sword in the field. It makes me wonder too, we've got all these hordes of people that are coming into America, and you're just like, why are you coming here? Don't you understand? If you could only see what the prophecies are and what the prophecies say, and you think you would turn around right now and you'd be heading back south. You would be getting out of this country and you wouldn't be staying around here. But on the other hand, I'm going to say, what are we looking for? Not to escape this country, not to escape this nation, but to hear the sound of the shofar, and then we can escape through the door, in the sequestering of the 5 virgins that have an extra oil. So there you go. That's what I'm saying, and that's what we should really be doing. Not looking to be escaping to another country, to another place, because if there's havoc here, what's going to be happening in the other nations? Seriously. If there's chaos and confusion here, what's going to be going on in the other nations? In fact, let me just put it this way. Gilbert Sars actually says, when you look at the debris trail and you look at what Book of Revelation says, and that a third of the land masses of the world will be pelted, it's just not the United States, by the way. It's Central America and it's South America. So we all need to be aware so that we can escape. The best place to be is in the shadow of the Most High. That's where you need to be. And you need to prosper where you're living in the meantime. Okay? Going on, it says, your children shall die of hunger, and you shall fall through the sword, and your city shall be broken down, and all yours shall perish with the sword in the field. They that be in the mountains shall die of hunger, and eat their own flesh, and drink their own blood, for very hunger of bread and thirst of water. And you are unhappy. You as unhappy shall come through the sea and receive plagues again. It just, in other words, what it's saying is, you can't just run from this, right? You just can't run from the things that are coming upon the earth. You can't just go run and hide in another place. You can't go run and hide in the mountains. You can't go run and hide in the field. What you have to do is you have to be where Yahweh has you. And then from there, he will tell you how to move and how to go. That's what chapter 16 is going to talk about. But he's going to emphasize all sorts of different things. And why the emphasis? Because if there is somebody that's listening right now and you're saying, you know what, I don't understand how this fits the biblical narrative. Or you might say, well, I mean, my antennas are perked up because I know this interplanetary system is coming through, or this celestial body is coming through, but why? What is it for? Is it just because it's a natural phenomena that passes around the earth at certain times in history, as Gil Broussard has documented about every 300 or so years? It passes through, and it depends on how far away it is from us when it does come through. Well, if you're just simply looking at it from a natural level, I'm sorry, you're missing the point. You are missing the point. And this is why we look to what the prophets have said. We look what the sages have said. Those who lived in a different age, who have one way or another attempted to document it for us. Why? Because it is an instrument of the Most High to get our attention. Okay? It's an instrument of the Most High to get our attention. So let it get your attention, because Ezra here in chapter 16, as we get into it, actually speaks to people, perhaps like you, if you're joining us and you're like, what's this Planet 7X about? And you are drawn to listen to this. And I hope that you didn't skip out just because I was at the very beginning and said, hey, we've got some financial needs at Life of Worship, and we, some people's, I'm just going to move on from there. Okay, I want you to hear that this is an instrument of Yah to get our attention, and there will be those who refuse to give the Most High their attention. And then it says, when that happens, it says that they will perish. They're going to go through a lot of suffering. In fact, what they're going to do, they're going to blame it on believers. Yeah, we're going to get that. That's going to be over in chapter 16. So let's go on. And it's talking about this fire, verse 62, and shall consume you and your cities, your land and your mountains, all your woods and your fruitful trees. They shall burn up with fire. Your children shall they carry away captive, and look what you have. They shall spoil it and mar the beauty of your face. So just think, America, look, why do we have such hordes of people coming into America? Because they think America is the place to come to. And they think of America as being a beautiful place, and this is a description to me. I'm not going to leave Canada out of this, because honestly, even though your government system is different and it's parliamentary, and you're connected with the King of England and the royalty of England and all the monarchy, just because you are, guess what? You're on the same continent, and much of your culture is like what we have here in the United States. So we're all in this together. And that's why because we are in this together, then we draw strength from one another. We encourage one another all the more as we see that day drawing near. That's why we gather on Shabbat too, right? And the feast days, all the Sabbaths. And why? Because that is how we encourage one another as we see the day approaching. Okay. So chapter 16. Woe be unto you, Babel and Asia. Woe unto you, Mitzrayim. That's Egypt. So now it's talking about Babel and Asia. Now, Babel can be talking about the land of around Iraq and Iran, but more specific, and all of their alliances. But I really think when it's talking about Babel and Asia, I think for me, it's speaking of the Western nations. I think it's talking about Western Europe and North America, and that's how I kind of look at it, because we have that which is called Babylon. Pastor Sandy's done some not good research, and which seems to point to how London, with the city of London being the chief financial hub of all of the mess that we're seeing around the world. It's not Wall Street, and it's not the Fed. It's the city of London. They're the ones that control the money and loan the money out to the different nations and to our Fed, and they control the purse strings of the world. That's why Rome, Vatican, is controlling another part of this, and another part is the military side of it. It's controlled through Washington D.C. So that's why I say so. Babel would correspond with London, and then therefore the United States and Canada, and then all of the different places around the world, Australia and New Zealand, and all of the different islands that were all part of the British Empire. They've allegedly received their independence. These would be the daughters of Babylon. So you kind of throw it all together, and you have Babel and Asia. Now, Asia, if you look at a map, where's Asia? Well, basically that takes anywhere from the Middle East going all the way to the Pacific Ocean. You can see Russia is divided between Europe by the Ural Mountains. So it's divided in two different parts. Part of it's Asia, part of it is European. And yet a lot of the culture in Russia is European. But when you look at the land masses where they kind of draw the lines and that sort of stuff, you have Asia on one side, you've got Babel on another side, and then it gives another thing, and it says Mitzrayim, so it's talking about Egypt. And you think, well, what about the influence of Mitzrayim? How far did Egypt influence in the days of the pharaohs? They influence a lot of areas, so I don't think you want to leave it specifically to Egypt. However, it can be specifically just Egypt and the ancient lands of Egypt. And then it says Aram, and Aram is the ancient name for, of all places, Aram is where it's connected. Have you ever heard of the language Aramaic? Oh yeah. So the Aramaic speaking nations. Let me pull up another map here that I pulled up earlier. Let me see if I can bring this over. And you see that? Aram, that is the biblical region of Aram. And so This part here where you see my cursor, that right there is kind of pretty much aligns with modern day Syria. And that would have been called in the ancient days of Aram. But the influence of Assyria and that language, the ancient language of the Assyrian language, which would be Aramaic, it extended way up. If you follow in a map, it goes all the way to the Euphrates, and then you can follow it all the way up to the Caucasus, where Armenia is. Armenia, it has a very similar language connection, Armenia, Aram. So because why? Because they speak Aramaic. And so you go all the way up that direction, and that whole influence is there. So it says, woe be unto you, Mitzrayim and Aram. Gird up yourselves with cloths of sack and hair, bewail your children and be sorry, for your destruction is at hand. So nobody's left out, even though, you may have this planet 7X celestial body type of event that would take place. And it seems like, it's possible that, a third of the earth is, in the Western hemisphere, but how much of the earth is also going to be affected? Right? How much of the earth will also be affected? Maybe they won't be in the debris trail where the earth, as Gil Broussard says, that because of this, the gravitational and plasma connections between earth and this celestial body, it'll literally stop the rotation of the earth. And when it stops within a 24-hour period, I mean, you can kind of think about it as there's going to be slosh effect. There's going to be great earthquakes. And so even though that one part of the earth may not get pelted, they're going to have the other effects that's going to take place. So there's going to be a side that's going to be sun facing. There's going to be a side that's going to be in the dark. And the side in the dark is going to get really cold. And the side that's sun facing could get really hot during that little time period before the earth begins its rotation once again after it passes through that debris trail. By the way, it passes twice through the debris trail, but once does this celestial body pass right in front of the earth. And so that's why it says to gird up yourselves with basically sackcloth and ashes. Is saying, repent, every one of you. Not one corner of the earth will not be affected. That's kind of a double negative, but you know what I'm saying. Every corner of the earth will be affected. And so it says, repent and get your children to repent and be sorry, for the destruction is at hand. And so it's like right there. Remember, go to Luke chapter 21 is a good way to say this, that men's heart shall fail them for those things that are coming upon the earth. And so pray that you might be able to stand. All right. Pray that you might be able to stand. And that is very, very, very important, that we'll be able to endure the time that is coming upon us. We all need to be praying that way. If there's any type of prayer that we should be praying right now, because of the day and the hour that we're living in, is that we may be able to stand and endure these things. That's what we need to be praying. And I think we should be praying earnestly about that. And since I'm saying that, that's something that I am definitely going to be incorporating in times of prayer, that we will be able to stand and endure. So join me in that, okay? And it says, a sword is sent upon you, who may turn it back? So not only do we have these geographical great impacts that are affecting the oceans, they're affecting the land masses of the earth, but it says at the same time, sword is sent against you, sent upon you, and who's going to turn it back? So war, a fire is sent upon you, and who may quench it? Okay, so great fires. Why? Because of, where on one side we have flooding, the other side, we have great drought and things burn very quickly. And when you have plasma discharges going on, I can't imagine the fires. And then with the big winds, the fire just ravaging through the land, just like what we see around here in the springtime when things are dry and the winds kick up, and you can have an area just torched in a matter of minutes because of 60-mile-an-hour winds that's pushing that fire going on. It says, who's going to quench that fire? And then plagues are sent unto you. And what is he that may drive them away? Like plagues. What type of plagues? Well, you can think about locusts, but you can also think about anything else that's devouring. It's devouring the land. And who's going to be able to drive them away? You can actually think about the plague of people coming in. Who's going to drive them away? It's overwhelming. How can you actually get it done? May any man drive away a hungry lion in the wood? Now he's asking these rhetorical questions. Or may anyone quench the fire in stubble? I mean, how are you gonna put it out if you don't even have, if it's so dry you don't have wind, or you don't have water when it began to burn? And may one turn again the arrow that is shot of a strong archer? And you think about that. What about ballistic missiles? You might be able to get some of them. You might be able to shield to protect yourself, but who's really going to turn away those arrows? And it says El Yahweh, El Yahweh. I mean, now we've elevated Yahweh's name. He's still the Most High, but he's elevating his name as El Yahweh, and sends the plagues. And who is he that can drive them away? In other words, it is Yahweh sending the plagues. It is a fire that goes forth because of his wrath. It's he that's casting out the lightnings, and and when he thunders, who is not going to be afraid? I always go back to last week's Torah portion. I was talking about it in Exodus chapter 19. What did the people do when they heard the thunderings? There was the thunderings and the lightnings and all that sort of stuff. What did they were afraid. And I just can't imagine, they didn't have that covering of walking in Torah, walking close to Yeshua, walking in the same faith and faithfulness like Moses. And so what did they do? They backed down and they said, oh, you Moses, why don't you just go listen to what he has to say and then come back and tell us, because we can't stand it. We can't handle it. That is the very rattling of the souls of men that'll take place when they're seeing all of these things and chaos within our earthly realm and have no faith to endure it. What are they going to do? Going on, it says, Yahweh shall threaten, and who shall not be utterly beaten to powder at his presence? So all of this, by the way, is a representation of his presence for those that are without him. This is not for his people that seek refuge in him. It says the earthquakes and the foundations thereof, the earthquakes and the foundations thereof, the sea arises up with waves from the deep, and the waves of it are troubled. So now we got land and sea issues. And the fishes thereof also before Yahweh, and before the glory of his power. For strong is his right hand that bends the bow. His arrows that he shoots are sharp and shall not miss. And when they begin to be shot, into the ends of the earth. And this is that other part. Gilbert Sarge talked about the plasma discharges when these two celestial bodies come together, Earth and this planet 7X, Planet X, Nibiru, whatever you want to call it. When it passes through, the plasma discharges are all over the earth to the ends of the world. It says where it's going to be. Behold, the plagues are sent and shall not return again until they come upon the earth. So in other words, they're going to go forth. They will keep coming. They will keep going, and they will accomplish all that Yah sends them out to do. And talking about the fire, it can't be put out until it consumes what it's supposed to consume. And as it consumes even the foundation of the earth, it says. So, I mean, it continues on, verse 17. Ezra says, woe is me, woe is me. Who will deliver me in those days? So there's that rhetorical question. Wow. Ezra may even be thinking of, if this is going to be happening, is this going to happen in my lifetime? And we know that it doesn't, but it feels so real, like it would happen in his lifetime. And yet, have we seen any of this in the history that we know, at least the history that hasn't been buried? And so I don't think we have. And yet, is this in our future? And maybe in a very near future. I mean, we were talking about how we've got an eclipse going to pass over the United States next here in April 6th, I believe. It's going to be a Shabbat. first Shabbat in April. The beginning of sorrows and great mournings. So he's saying, whoa, who's going to deliver me in these days? The beginning of sorrows and great mournings. Now, isn't that what Yeshua said in Matthew 24? That these are just the beginning of sorrows. What? You mean the plagues and the fire and the eruptions and the earthquakes and the plasma discharge and all that sort of stuff? That's just the beginning of sorrows? Selah, pause, think about that. The beginning of famine and great, and then it says, and great death. So we know in the revelation of John, or the revelation of Yeshua that John is recording, he talks about how many people will perish during these times with the different plagues that are hitting the earth. I mean, we're talking billions of people. And so it talks about the beginning of famine and great death, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear. The powers shall stand in fear. The beginnings of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come? Behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment. Why are they sent? Because if people are not willing to repent, or they say they've repented but have not, or they're saying, well, I'm waiting for a later day to repent, or I know I got these things in my life, so I'm just struggling too hard. And guess what? They're sent as scourges for amendment. So if you're having problems with repentance, guess what? There's a big kick in the rear that's coming to get that done. Why? Then you have to look at it as like, why would God do something like this? Why would these judgments come? Why would it be so hard? Why would it be so rough? He's just an angry God. He's not a just God. No, I actually would beg to differ with you, because if he hasn't been able to get a hold of our attention during the good times, then this is mercy being poured out. But this mercy hurts. Yeah, this is mercy poured out because once you're off this planet, and that we're not talking about a trip with Elon Musk to Mars. This is talking about if once you're dead and gone, then you face the judgment. And if you've not made those decisions, and if you've not repented of those sins and those iniquities in your life, then guess what? Then it is an eternity that's going to be thousands of times worse than these plagues that are coming upon the earth. He's saying, I'm doing whatever I can to get your attention, whatever I can, kind of like the guy that's on the in his house and the floods are coming, and the guy comes up and said, you got to get out of here. I'll give you a ride. He says, no, God will deliver me. And then the water starts to rise. He has got to get up on his roof, and the story. And the guy comes up on a boat. Here, get on the boat. Get out of here. Let's get out of here right now. He says, no, God will deliver me. And then ultimately he's sitting on top of the chimney, and here comes a helicopter. He said, we'll pick you up now. No, God will deliver me. And then the guy drowns. And he says, God, why didn't you deliver me? He said, well, I sent a guy in the car, and I sounded a guy in a boat, and I sounded a guy in a helicopter, and you didn't listen. Think about it. Behold, then it says, verse 21, verse 20, but scourges for amendment, that's verse 19. But for all these things, they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges. I mean, it's almost like Ezra is saying, I'm baffled. I'm baffled by these things, that no one will turn. No one's going to do anything. So it says, behold, victuals shall be so good, cheap upon the earth, that they shall think themselves to be in good case. And even then shall evil grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great confusion. So it's like, well, I can still go to the grocery store. I can still buy things. It's still, I know it's kind of, my budget's kind of tight right now, but I can still at least get things, and it's still in a reasonable place. I mean, think about this. Third world countries, you can go to third world countries and go down to the market, and you can buy all sorts of produce, and it's cheap. Honestly, you can get some really good fruits and vegetables and all that sort of stuff, and it's cheap. It's very inexpensive. So it must not going to be as bad as we think. Everything's still good in good case. Everything's still good, right? We're still good. So yeah, there's stuff going on. There's an invasion in America, and there's war going on in the Middle East, and all this stuff is escalating in Europe. But it's still good. It's all good. We can just kind of bunker down where we're at because it'll just pass us by. Guess what? No one gets passed by. Nobody. It says to every corner of the earth. Remember what it read? Every corner of the earth. And it says, and even then shall evils grow upon earth, swords, famines, great confusion. For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. So if you're like, well, we still got food. Well, guess what? The sword's coming. And you know what else? The sword isn't just war. The sword can be that home invasion when they come into your home and they kill everybody in the house because they're looking for your food. They're looking for your stuff, right? And the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall be no man to comfort them. For the earth shall be wasted, and the cities shall be cast down. There shall be no man left till the earth, and to there'll be to till the earth. Let me read this right. There shall be no man to till the earth. I think about this like in Ukraine right now. Guess what? They're annihilating every working man and sending them to the front. Like last month, I think they lost 23,000 men on the front. And let alone the beginning of the conflict, how many that have lost their lives. These are men that work the factories. They work the mechanic shops. They work they were merchants. They were truck drivers. They were farmers. Every one of them. Who's going to farm? I'm going to ask you that. Who's going to farm in Ukraine once this is all done? Who's going to be able to work the storehouses and to mechanic and to weld and to plumb and to do electricity and who's going to be, what about the financiers? Well, they probably had money, they bribed their way out, but nevertheless, who's going to be in their country, even what type of Ukraine will be left? So, okay, I diverted a little bit, but it says, but there'll be no man to till the earth and to sow it. And then it actually says this: the trees shall give fruit, but who's going to gather them? And the grapes shall ripen, but who's going to harvest them and tread them? For all the places shall be desolate of men. Why? Because the men are going to be out there protecting their families. They're going to be sent out to war. They're going to be battling to protect, their household, and it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. And I'm not saying that women can't do these things, but we're talking what's been traditionally the workforce of the men are going to be left to whoever's surviving, and even the men that are left won't be able to take care of any of the population, let alone, because when they're going to be looking after themselves, they're all alone. Maybe their whole family's wiped out, or let alone the surviving families or the survivors of the community. And I know what it takes to do the garden, like what we have, and how hard it is to work. And you think it's not even enough to eat. We still have to supplement. In an orchard of olives upon every tree, it goes on here. It says, for a city there shall be 10 left, and 2 of the field, and which shall hide themselves in the thick groves and in the clefts of the rocks. Why? Because it's going to just be crazy times. People, there's not going to be, in other words, the people are not going to be good. People that are going to be roaming, people that you thought were good people, will not be good people any longer. And then it says, and as in the orchard of olives, upon every tree there are left 3 or 4 olives, or as in a vineyard, just some clusters that are left, when those are looking hard for maybe just a bite. And why? Because whoever's left will ravage what's in there, and what very little will be left. And in those days there'll be 3 or 4 left by them that search their houses with the sword, and the earth shall be laid waste, and the fields thereof shall wax old, and her ways and all her paths shall grow full of thorns, because no man shall travel thereof. So think about this. So people aren't going to be going through the fields. There's nobody going to be tending the fields. The fields are going to get overgrown. And you think about all this farmland that we have, and none of it be usable because it'll be quickly overtaken by weeds. So yeah, this is really apocalyptic, Yeah, Linda, I'm just thinking about, this is like, I'm thinking about the movie, the Book of Eli, right? Uh, and then it goes on, and we'll just have to pick up from here later on, and because it's talking about what about the people that are left, and and then there's some really significant, and we'll do it next week. We'll do it next week because I don't want to cut it short. There's really some very, very good eternal perspective, very, very good eternal perspective that that we need to talk about next week, because Ezra, has he not given us a lot of things to chew on, a lot of questions that he had during this journey here in for Ezra, that's allowed us to really ponder about our own spirituality, our own relationship with the Most High, about our own frailties, where our focus lies, and all of that. Well, we're going to be going into that next week and see what it has to bring. Well, y'all have been great. So I thank you very much for joining us. Stay with us. Come back with us next week on Walking in Spirit and Truth here on the Lamb Network, and also on Walking in Spirit and Truth. That's the name of the show, on the Life of Worship Ministries channel on YouTube. All right, there you go. Until next time, Shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.